All right, we're
Sorry
ready.
about
That's okay. That comes with tech. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this special meeting to order, and we will with a roll call by Ms. Sawyer. Thank you, Ms. Sawyer.
Sharon Warden,
Present.
Pam Pereza,
Here.
George Archuleta,
Here.
Virginia Houston, Daniel Spence,
I am present, but I will choose to recuse myself from the discussion for my potential involvement on the learning pods with our church.
thank you, Mr. Spence. Rodney Walton,
Here.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Present.
Ms. Virginia Houston. Thank you, Ms. Houston. We have everyone. Chair Warden.
Thank you. And can you read our ethics awareness statement, please?
Welcome to this meeting of the Elizabeth City Pasquotank County Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of this board that it's your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is our duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage our personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board?
Ms. Houston, we have had one member recuse himself from this discussion and vote because of a potential conflict of interest.
Okay. Conflicts or potential conflicts are duly noted and will be reflected in the minutes.
Thank you. May I have a motion? May I have a motion to approve the agenda and a second, please?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. Now we need to take a roll call vote.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes. Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
and Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the discussing tonight falls Education Committee Chair Pereza will introduce our speaker for the night.
Yes, Chair Warden, we have Dr. Amy Jo Spencer. She will be presenting the Learning Pods Memorandum of Understanding. Dr. Spencer.
Good evening, Board Chair Warden, Vice Chair and Committee Chair Pereza, board members and colleagues. I come before you this evening to request approval of PE01 Learning Pod Memorandum of Understanding. As presented previously to the board, the pandemic has created some challenges. Currently, students in Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools have the option of attending school face-to-face or remaining in remote learning. However, the number of students permitted in the face-to-face classroom is reduced as a result of social distancing guidelines. This has proven stressful to parents who work during the day and whose students need support. As you have seen in previous presentations, many parents of students enrolled in Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools have their students on a waiting list to return to face-to-face instruction. Additionally, there are parents who would feel more comfortable with their students in a smaller face-to-face setting. Learning pods established in partnership with community organizations provide just that, a safe, supervised space for students to connect to and actively engage in virtual instruction offered by their ECPPS teachers. The Memorandum of Understanding is an agreement between the Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools and the community organization. We are extremely appreciative of the support our community continues to provide for the students in our district and the commitment we all collectively share in ensuring our students receive a quality education in spite of the challenges posed by COVID-19. Are there any questions?
I have one question. The
Yes, sir.
teachers are going to be actually teaching, correct? Virtually.
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay, well, isn't that what they're already doing? I
Yes.
don't see the difference.
I'm glad that you brought that up. And one of the things that we have been looking at is there are some students who need that additional support. And some of them have spotty internet connections still. And so some of the criteria that we have utilized to ensure that we have students that are participating in these learning pods is, are they on paper packets? Are they on that waiting list where they do need that support because they aren't perhaps able to connect at the time that the teacher is there, or the parents need that additional support? So the students would be able to go to this site where there will be people there to help them. So they will be socially distanced. They will follow those guidelines that the schools are as well. And then they will also have that opportunity then to be able to connect. And there will be adults there to help them while logging on with support in completing their assignments and any other additional things that they would need.
So other than just the teachers, they're gonna be like tutors.
Yes, sir,
There,
there
is that
are.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a clear picture. Now,
Yes.
how is this all volunteer, or is it going to be financed in some way?
Okay, so we have received some financing to be able to provide those tutors. And additionally, the community organizations do have some volunteers from their organization that would also help and support those efforts as well. We do have, we have provided about 4 tutors per site, depending on the size of the site, because remember, we have those social distancing guidelines. So the more adults that we put in, the less students that can be there. So we want to make sure that there is an adequate number of adults to students to be able to ensure that they are getting the support that they need. And this is to support the instruction of the North Carolina state standards by the classroom teacher. It is not in any way to supplant any of those efforts.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Spencer. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
May I ask? Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Sharon. You're fine.
Selection of the students who will be involved in this?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it voluntary? Have there been students identified for whatever reason?
Yes. So what we wanted to do was make this as equitable as possible. And we also wanted to take into consideration the parents that would need the most support. And so what we wanted to do was start at the elementary level first. And we wanted to look at 3 criteria. We wanted to look at the number of students that were using the paper packets, that perhaps were having difficulties logging on with that internet connection. And then we also wanted to look at the number of students that were using those paper packets, but they were on that list for face-to-face. And then in the event that they didn't have the paper packets, but they were still on that waiting list, that we would do that. So what we would like to do is be able to go in that order, because we think the ones that have 0 connection whatsoever would be first. We have already pulled our principals to see the numbers of those students. In the event that we have more students than we do have available slots, we have determined that we would do that by lottery, but because that would be the only fair and equitable way to do that. Some of the criteria for this is the fact that we do not have transportation to these sites. And so that might also be, you know, when we're talking to the parents and getting that information, that might be something that would eliminate some of those potential students. So all of those things would be taken into consideration. Yes. So that's how they are selected.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Spencer, I have a couple of questions for you. You answered my transportation question. I guess that was one of my primary ones. Secondarily, the location, unless I'm missing something, did we decide on the locations of the Learning Pod centers already, or?
We had identified some sites, and this has been in process for quite some time. And we looked at places that would be around the schools, so that we would try to be able to have within our district wide spaces. But then you also have to consider those organizations that have the ability or capability to be able to do that. And so we have been in contact with those community organizations. We don't want to in any way mention any of those at this time, because we still want them to be able to have the opportunity to be able to read over if the memorandum of understanding is approved. They would still have the opportunity to then decline in the event that they don't agree with that. And so I think to be able to identify who they are particularly would be premature.
Okay, that's fine. A second question would be, when is the expectation we would begin with the Learning Pods?
Okay, so that too would also be indicative of the organization itself. We have one potential site that is very much ready to go. We've had the interviews for tutors. We have supplies already in place that have been inventoried, asset tagged, and ready to go. So it's just a matter of the agreement, the memorandum of understanding being signed, and then going out to the site and ensuring that, you know, everything is in place as far as signage and contacting the parents. We're also working with others. Again, they have to have safety plans in place. Those have to be approved just like our schools. And so we want to make sure that our students that go are in a safe environment where we're following all of the guidelines.
Okay, and I think this is one last question. And I'll try to tie it all in together with what I was asking, or the purpose for my ask. My ask is this: with the governor, I guess, not vetoing the bill to open up schools completely, and the date and the time, I guess the time frame is what I'm concerned about, because if, let's just say, 4 weeks as an arbitrary time, if in 4 weeks the pandemic is on some sort of control, or, you know, we're able to be managed, the learning pods could still be, I guess, essential in the sense of students who do not want to return back to school. But if schools are reopening at that time, that's my thought. My thought is the focus of getting the learning pods together, yes, but I'm also looking as every day passes, we're getting closer and closer to like being able to reopen schools. So what happens in a case like that? Not that the MOU, which is the contract, which would be needed, yes, but if we're able to reopen schools within, you know, let's say again, the window is arbitrary. It's not something that is written in stone. But if in 4 weeks we could open, that's April 1st, around that week after Easter, how would that affect or change things?
I still believe that there are parents that would prefer to have their students potentially in a smaller setting. So they may still need to have that face-to-face support, but the coming to a school where it's, you know, there are a lot more interactions, there's a lot more opportunities for students to be able to, you know, come in contact with one another, even though there would be safety protocols in place, there could be some parents that would still want to have that. Additionally, if the one site in particular that we're very close to moving on is ready, it would be before April 1st.
Okay, so then we go back to selecting the students. And so that happens after this, I guess.
right. What we didn't want to do is go ahead and start selecting students and getting parents' hopes up, and then have you all get ahead of the board basically before you ever approved a memorandum of understanding, right?
Yeah.
And then have to go back and say, never mind. But what we did want to do was ensure that this was in place, but then also that the community organization that is so willing to support our students has the opportunity to look it over and to agree with what that memorandum says. And so that is a commitment. We're very appreciative of the fact that there are community partners that want to support our students and provide this safe space for them. And so, again, we didn't want to get ahead of them either. And so I think once this occurs, like I said, we're ready to move. We just need to make sure that all of the people are also willing to move. And if we move where those students would move out of that learning pod, then we could always go back to that list and see if there are still other students that would need to, potentially benefit from participation in that learning pod. So always keeping that in mind as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Spencer, I have a question.
Do you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Sheila.
Go on. I was about to say, go on. So it seems that these sites were predetermined and selected. Approximately how many do you have? And was it open to others who, maybe would want to provide this service to students? So could you tell us approximately how many people you reached out to, and were your selections limited to those? We may have someone listening who would think that they would like to assist children in this way.
Okay, so we would be, I'm going to take the latter part of the question first. So
Sure.
in the event that someone would want to actually be a part of that, then yes, please reach out. That is completely fine, and we would look at that. What we did is there was a team of people, and this started out as part of a grant application process. And so we had identified specific sites. Whenever we received information about the grant, we still wanted to move on the learning pods. We did not receive the grant, but we still felt that it was worth pursuing. And so we went with those free sites that we had previously identified with that grant and moved forward with that. But we're not being exclusive. So if anybody is out there and is listening and has a site and is wanting to partner with us, that we would take that into consideration, most definitely.
Right, because which is fine to select, but of course, when you do that, the question is, well, what formula was used? How did you determine?
Right.
And you did kind of mention that you're looking at location, and I understand that, but certainly if you have someone who would like to assist and they have, they have the arrangements, or they have the set in the location that they know that they would be able to assist, then that would be great. So you're opening it to them. I also, and just reading the document, you're providing the tutors. And so with the funds you received, you are supporting the tutors. And then the facility should have volunteers on hand. I mean, that's based on what you stated in the MOU.
Yes, ma'am.
So would they be the only, so you're only paying or supporting the tutors?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Participate and go out to the locations, or however you're going to do it virtually. And then they will have volunteers who then would support students that we're not compensating the volunteers.
Correct.
Well, of course, they're volunteers, but I guess what I'm trying to say is we're only supporting the tutors.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Spencer, my question was about the background checks for volunteers. It said that the owner knows that they need to provide those documents upon request. Will we be auditing those background check documents, and how often will we be doing that?
And Ms. Sawyer, I'm going to let you, do you have any information from our board attorney that would answer that question? And if not, Ms. Pereza, I can get back with you.
Okay, because it just said that they would keep those records of background checks for any individuals that would be interacting with our students, and that we would, they know that they have to provide it to us upon request. I was just wanting to make sure that we were actually requesting those documents
Oh, absolutely.
on a regular basis, and that they need to provide that documentation if there's someone who's added. And then my other question was about, I know that they know they need to follow the rules of the school district, but posting pictures and things like that on social media and things like that wasn't really addressed. I know that we have students who, people may be excited about what they're doing and helping, but we also have the photograph forms that we have to sign, and posting things on social media with students and things like that. Keeping that confidential of who's in those learning pods was something that I guess I was reading that as a board member, but as a parent too, thinking about.
Right.
I can't go to an off-site location and wanting to feel comfortable that my child or all of our children are in a safe environment. And will anyone from the district be going in and inspecting the sites to ensure that they are meeting the guidelines of what you feel like is the
Absolutely.
for students? Okay.
Absolutely.
I guess this is off of just so I can understand a little more. I thought Ms. Perez asked some excellent questions. So there is a background sheet they got to fill out, and somebody's going to investigate that, which I hope is you all or whatever. And the second thing, you said something about interviews. The tutors are you going to interview them personally, or how are they chosen?
Okay, so we advertised for tutors.
Right.
And we had that posted for some time. And then we went through and we looked at the criteria that we were looking at to help and support our students. And then we polled those who met the criteria, and we interviewed, and we've had some very good interviews. And so some very, very good candidates. And so we're excited about that. Yes, sir.
Okay, so every tutor you're going to see before they actually start. Okay.
Yes, we've already interviewed several really great candidates.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There was one other question, but it blew my mind. It mustn't have been very important. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Spencer, this is my last question, and you may not be able to answer it, but when we look at the background checks, and I see that certainly we want to make sure that they're not a pedophile or a sex offender, and I see that in the MOU, then my question would be, once the background check is completed, and maybe there's something on the record, who makes the decision as to whether that person could still work with the children? I mean, it's based on what is on the record. So who's going to review that and make that decision? And you may not have that answer, but that's something to think about. What is it that could be on this record that we would feel would be unacceptable? So that would have to be known, because then someone could easily say, well, you mentioned sex offender and the MOU, but you didn't mention that the person was a felon, or and that may not be it. Maybe the person was a felon, maybe that's not on their record anymore. I could go on and on about what could be on a record.
Right.
But it's just something to think about. Not that you may be able to answer that tonight, but that could pose a problem later. Hopefully it would not, but you just want to be prepared.
Thank you.
Dr. Spencer, one more question from me.
Okay.
What would the hours of operation would be? Would they coincide with the school, or would they be open, I guess, a little after, to allow for, I guess, specialized tutoring, things of that nature?
So we're asking the organizations to be open from 8 to 12, and that's so it coincides with the direct instruction that's being provided by the classroom teacher. Again, they would come a little bit early, but obviously being ready to go at 8 o'clock and then ending at noon.
Okay, and it says meals would be provided. So that is that breakfast and lunch, or is that snacks from 8 to 12?
So in accordance with the guidelines and in keeping with the ABC Science Collaborative and the things that we have learned, we have determined that they would have breakfast, but then the lunch would be grab and go.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Is this going to add very much more on the teacher's plate? I mean, they're doing quite a bit as it is.
Correct. So actually, hopefully this will help support what is happening because again, these students are ones that perhaps are on those paper packets, right? Who maybe do need to have that interaction with a teacher virtually, but they don't have the opportunity to do that. Or maybe they do have the opportunity to do that, but because they are younger and their parents are working, they may not be able to get on at that time. And so this will give that opportunity for that connection, for that instruction, but then also that support, because oftentimes students maybe struggle and they can't get on, or they may need to be reminded to get back on because maybe a parent isn't there to be able to say, oh, you have another Google meeting at this time with your other teacher. And some of the students, maybe only went to the first class, but they didn't go to the second, or maybe they were, just were having a little bit of difficulty. This would provide that support because then you would have those adults there to ensure that they were getting on and to make sure that they had the support that they needed.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to make sure that it's monitored, that our teachers, are going to be heard. They're not going to be overloaded. They, like
Correct.
I say, I feel they already have a lot on their plate and are doing the best they can. And I just, I hate to see any more.
Absolutely. This is to support them. And we are very appreciative of the hard work that the teachers are doing. It seems like this pandemic has truly created challenges where we're being asked to do everything that we were doing in the past. And then in addition to that, doing more. And so I hear what you are saying, but this should help support the teachers in ensuring that the students are getting that quality education.
Thank you. And if I could ask one more thing on the finances. So the tutors are the ones getting paid. The actual place or building or whatever will not get paid, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Hey, are there any other questions for Dr. Spencer?
I just appreciate everything she's done and how she answered every question.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Archuleta, I appreciate that, but I must say that we are a fantastic team.
Yes.
And I'm the person presenting the information, but there is a lot of work and a lot of team effort. And I appreciate every single last one of the people that I work with.
Well, thank you, team. Thank you.
And I'd like to add to send out appreciation to those organizations from the community that are partnering with us to provide this to our kids. It does a lot when a community and wants to assist a school system. So I just want to say thank you persons as well.
Hey, are there any other questions for Dr. Spencer? Any other comments? Chair Warden, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the memorandum of understanding as presented by Dr. Spencer tonight.
Okay, there's been a motion offered. And we will take a roll call vote. Ms. Sawyer.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Daniel Spence, and I know that you have recused yourself. I've got that note. Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Warden. The motion carries.
Okay, the motion is Again, I appreciate all the hard work Ms. Spencer and your team, or Dr. Spencer and your team has this opportunity. Assuming that you can take us into closed.
Yes. The board will go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel actions that involve employees of this board as allowed by NC Statute 143-318-11A6.
Okay. We will log out of this closed
Ms. Wharton, we
session.
need a second.
Okay.
I'll second it.
I
Okay.
thought I had it. Pam, did you second it?
Virginia.
I got it.
Okay. All
So
right.
roll call vote. Pam Pereza,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Daniel
Yes.
Spence.
Yes.
I got you, Ms. Houston. Thank you. Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries, Ms. Wharton.
Okay, thank you. We'll log out and join back in closed session. Thank you very much.